Gurpreet Singh, am I audible? Can you hear me? Perfect, perfect, good. So yeah, as mentioned, guys, we've talked about how to install the Kali Linux in the earlier session. So this is what your Linux operating system looks like. Oh, let me quickly power it up. And today we're going to learn what the architecture of Kali is. How is it different from a Windows operating system? And what are some important files and folders in Linux? Okay. So first things first, let me show you how to log in into Kali. You have your default credentials, guys, username Kali and password Kali as well. When you get the login screen here, you can give the username KALI, everything in lowercase, and the same exact password, KALI. Click on login, and that should give you login access to Kali here. Okay. And once you have logged in, this is what it looks like. As mentioned, it contains a lot of important tools for cybersecurity. But before we get into the tools, let's talk about Linux operating systems in general. Okay. So your Kali Linux initially in the olden days was also commonly known as Backtrack Linux. Okay. An introduction to Kali is that it's an open source Debian flavored operating system built or aimed specifically for various information security tasks. Okay, such as penetration testing, security research, computer forensics, reverse engineering, vulnerability assessment, vulnerability scanning. All these operations can be performed in your Kali Linux operating system. The reason is it has all these tools pre-installed in it. So approximately around 600 plus tools are pre-installed in Kali for all the different types of cyber security related tasks. Okay. Now, when you talk about Linux operating systems in general, they're quite different from your Windows. Your Windows, on the other hand, is developed by Microsoft, and a very prominent feature for why Microsoft is popular is for its graphical user interface, GUI. Okay, it's one of the central features of Windows, making it a very user-friendly operating system. Okay, so again, as mentioned, one of the most widely used operating system across the world on personal computers, often preferred for gaming, your personal applications or productivity applications or so. Okay. On the other hand, when you talk about Linux operating systems, this is again, it was initially built by a person called Linus Torvalds. Okay, but again, he released it as open source. What I mean by open source is the application's source code is available for free on the internet. Anyone can download that source code. They can create their own versions of Linux as well if they want to. And that is why there's tons and tons of flavors. People started downloading the source code and they started building their own variations of the Linux operating system. Okay, and one such variation was a Debian operating system called Kali Linux. Okay, so again, one important or prominent feature of Linux operating systems is its command line interface, the CLI. That CLI provides a very powerful control to the user. So whatever operations you want to perform, you can perform it with just single line commands. Okay, the only difficulty that people might find in the initial days is remembering those commands or the syntax of the command. Okay, but as you get the hang of it, as days progress, as you keep practicing, Linux gets a lot more easier to use. Again, you would feel a lot more comfortable with it. Okay. And since it gives that powerful control to modify the settings or modify the configuration, Linux operating systems are lightweight and they are mostly used for server and development environments. So 90% of your web servers on the internet are always Linux servers. Okay. So one good thing about Linux is since it's open source and it's free to use, there's a large community on the internet for support and to aid you in understanding how to use Linux operating systems. And there's tons and tons of open source softwares. So what applications are paid in Windows or macOS are mostly available for free in Linux operating systems. Okay. And finally, there's the third category, macOS, available specifically or exclusively for Apple hardware. So your MacBooks or iPads or whatever, they run on the macOS operating system. Again, one prominent feature of macOS is its design, I would say, its aesthetics, design, and UI. Again, blending, again, good functionality with very good looks as well. Okay. Again, Unix-based operating system. So Unix is basically where Linux came from at the source code. So again, provides a very stable and secure environment, just like Linux operating systems. And Mac operating system is specifically chosen for its design, as mentioned, its multimedia capabilities, and its seamless integration or connectivity among the Apple ecosystem, among Apple devices. So that connectivity between iPhones, iPads, your MacBooks, your whatnot. Okay, all that connectivity and all that is top notch. compared to other operating systems. Okay. So these are the three platforms, guys, of operating systems that people regularly use: Windows, Linux, or Mac. Now we're going to talk about Linux specifically. Okay. Any questions or doubts up to this point? Anyone? Ben, Charles, Vamsi, Gurpreet, Wahab. Yeah, perfect. Moving forward. Now, again, as mentioned, let's talk about Linux specific. Right, perfect, Vamsi. So when you talk about the Windows architecture, guys, initially, so most of you might have used Windows. So this is more of a drive-based architecture. So you have multiple partitions here: C drive, D drive, E drive, etc. And most of the important files for the operating system, or again, the booting files, the configuration files, or the operating system related files, all of them are stored in this one single partition called the C partition. Okay, the first partition on your hard drive. Okay. In Linux, you don't have these partitions, guys. Even if you do have partitions, you can add partitions as well. But again, these partitions are more or less broken down in folders again. So what you call as folders in Windows are called as directories in Linux. So Linux is more of a directory-based architecture, where on the top level, you have one main directory here called the forward slash directory, or also commonly known as the parent root directory. So this is the parent for all the other directories in the Linux architecture. Okay. And all the other directories are subdirectories or branches of the main parent root. Okay. So this is what the architecture of Linux looks like. Rather than partitions, you have directories here where there's the one main directory called parent root directory. And under that, you have subdirectories as such. Okay. And whenever I use the term directory, it just indicates a folder. So what you call as folders in Windows are called as directories in Linux. And another important point to note is what you call as administrator in Windows. The user with the highest privileges is commonly known as the root user in Linux, the user with the highest privileges across the system. Now let's talk about a few important folders in Linux, guys. Okay. So as mentioned, there's the one topmost folder or top level directory called the parent root. If I show you this practically in my Kali operating system, if I open up my file system here, this is my parent root directory. So under the parent root, you have all these other subdirectories. Okay. So if you click on the search bar as well, if you click on this input field here, you can see it is denoted by a simple forward slash. Okay. So your parent root directory denoted by forward slash is the top level directory in Linux file system. All the other directories or files are actually subdirectories of subfiles of the parent root. Okay. So this encompasses, I would say, all the other data in your Linux operating system. Okay. So on the top level, you have the parent root. Under it, you have the entire file system here. Okay. Now, under the parent root, the first folder you have, or the first directory you have, is bin. If you notice over here as well, that's the first folder, bin. Now, bin stands for binaries, guys. What I mean by binaries is, okay, it contains essential binary executable files, such as the commands that you can execute in the Linux terminal. So whatever commands we have in Linux, whatever tools we can run in Linux are stored as binary executables in the bin folder. For example, if I open up my terminal here, right click, open terminal here. This opens up the terminal, which is like your command prompt in Windows. And I can run a simple command here. Let's say, who am I? So this who am I command tells you which user you are currently logged in as. So when I hit enter, it tells me I'm logged in as a user called Carl. If I run a command called ping, P-I-N-G, ping is a command to check for connectivity, if you can connect to a remote server or a remote IP. So if I give ping www.google.com, it tells me if I can connect to google.com, if my internet connectivity is fine or not. As you can see, I'm sending packets to Google and I'm getting a response here. Okay. I can run a command called clear, C-L-E-A-R. And when I hit enter, I get a fresh terminal. So whatever commands I'm executing here, the ping command, the who am I command, the clear command, all of these commands are actually stored as executables or binaries in the bin folder. So if I scroll down here, you can see the first command which we executed, clear. So if I keep scrolling, C-L-E-A-R. Yeah, over here, as you can see. So there's a script here, a binary executable here. Whenever I'm running that command clear in my terminal, it basically fetches the script from the binary folder or the bin folder and executes the code inside it. So every single command that you can execute in the Linux terminal is stored as a script here, as a binary executable here. Okay. Similarly, if I search for ping, you can see even ping is available as a command here. Okay. Similarly, if I search for who am I, you can see there's a command here called who am I. Okay. So again, as mentioned, bin is a folder which contains essential binary executable files. Okay. Such as basic commands like ls, cp, mv, rm. So there's multiple commands in Linux. So all these commands are stored as scripts here or binaries in the bin folder. Okay. Moving forward, after bin, we have boot. Now, this contains the important booting files for the operating system. So again, a similar folder like this is available in Windows as well. So if you go to your C drive, this PC, C drive, in C drive, if I go to Windows, in Windows, there's a folder here called boot. This is a folder which contains important files related to the boot process of Windows. And a similar folder like this is available in Linux as well. Contains files related to the boot process of the Linux operating system. Again, configuration files, bootloader files, etc. Okay. I would recommend do not delete any of these files from here, guys. Okay, because that would corrupt your operating system. Again, don't delete anything from bin as well. If you delete that certain file, that command cannot get executed anymore in your term. That's all. Okay. Won't harm your system in any way, but you would lose certain certain operations with commands in Linux. Okay. After boot and bin, we have the next folder called etc. Now, this is a folder which is also commonly known as etc. Okay, and it contains the configuration files for all applications or services in Linux. Okay, so your Linux operating system contains a lot of services or applications. Your web service called Apache, your DHCP service, your DNS service. Okay, and a lot of other applications as well. So all the applications configuration files are stored here. Okay, if I had to configure the web server, I can open up my Apache 2 folder here, and I can configure the web server from. Okay. Don't worry, I'm going to explain about all this a lot more in detail in the upcoming sessions, guys. But basically, all the configuration files for any application, any software in Linux are stored here. Okay. So etc stands for containing system-wide configuration files or scripts. Okay. Used to boot the system or configure various applications or services. We don't need this right now, guys, but just explaining what this folder contains. Then you have the home folder. This is a folder for the personal files of users. So now we are logged in as a user called Kali, if you remember. So if I go to my file system and if I go to this folder called home here, you can see if I open that up, there's a folder called Kali. So this has a home icon on it, indicating that this is my personal space where I can store my personal files, desktop related files, documents, download, music, pictures, etc. A similar setup like this is available in Windows as well. So if you go to C drive, in C drive, you have a folder called users, and in users, you have multiple user files or folders. So there's a user called Mr. A on my system, which contains his or her personal files, desktop, document, download, music, pictures, etc. So the same setup is available here in the Kali operating system as well in the home folder. Okay. So home is a personal space for second users in Linux. Okay. After that comes lib. Lib is basically libraries, guys. So sometimes your binaries in bin and sbin. So applications or again essential binaries in bin and sbin require supporting files. Those supporting files are stored in bin and sbin required during runtime. Okay. Moving forward, there's media now. Now this is a mount point for external devices. So in Windows, whenever you connect a USB drive or an external hard drive, it pops up as a separate drive here, right? You can see a USB drive separately added here. In Linux, that's not the case. Whenever you connect an external hard drive, it gets added as a directory in the media folder. So your other external storage gets added here as a separate folder for you to access the files in it. So that is what media stands for, a mount point for your external connected devices. Okay. So again, as mentioned, mount point for removable media, such as USB drives or external hard drives. Then you have OPT. It stands for optional. So reserved for the installation of optional softwares. Okay. Your Kali operating system is already pre-installed with all the tools required for cybersecurity. But if you want to install any other third-party apps or any other applications for your productivity applications, you can install it in the OPT folder. OPT stands for optional. So it's a good practice to store optional or third-party applications in the OPT folder here. Okay. After OPT, we have the next folder called root. Now, this is the folder for the root user, guys. So as mentioned, there's one more primary user called the admin user. which is commonly known as root. Okay. And for him, this is the personal space. Okay. But right now, we cannot access this because we don't have the permission yet. We are logged in right now as a Kali user. So to get access into this account, we need to be logged in as the root user. And I'm going to show you by the end of this class how to get root user access as well. Okay. So home folder is the personal space for secondary users. Root folder is the personal space for root user. And please do not confuse between parent root and root user's home directory. Parent root is denoted by a simple /. This is the top level directory. And root folder is the home directory for the root user. So again, it's better to call this a root and this as parent root. Okay. I hope that is clear. Any questions, any doubts up to this point? Vamsi, Charles, Ben, Gurpreet, or Wahab? Anything that you want me to explain again, guys? Any questions up to this point? Okay. Charles, any questions on your end? Wahab, any questions on your end? Gurpreet, yeah, you're saying something. Vamsi, any questions on your end? Right. Moving forward, after this, we have the next folder called sbin. So as mentioned, there's one more folder, guys, called sbin. Bin contains binaries, executable files to run in your terminal. Sbin also contains binaries itself, but these are the binaries reserved for the super user. Super user in the sense your root user. Okay. So certain commands or certain executables can only be run by the root user. So those reserved executables are called as super user executables, and they're stored in sbin. So similar to bin, but contains binary executables that are typically used by system admins. Okay, so some binaries require super user privileges for execution. If I show you an example for this, there's a command called apt-get. So again, we'll talk about this command a lot in the upcoming sessions, but this is basically to install applications in Kali. So if I have to install any app, I can type install and I can specify the name of that application. Let's say Nmap. Okay, so now when I hit enter, this is the command to execute and install that. But if you notice, I'm getting an error here. Okay. And if I read out the error, it says permission denied. Okay. And why is the permission being denied right now? Unable to acquire the log. Okay. Because you're not the root user. Are you root? I'm not root. And hence permission is denied. So certain commands require root user privileges, and those commands are stored in the sbin folder. So for installing applications, uninstalling applications, modifying system configurations, certain commands for such do have a requirement for root privilege, and they're stored in sbin here. Okay. Then you have the next folder called TMP, which stands for temporary or cache files. Okay. So during your system's runtime, a lot of temporary and unnecessary cache files are generated. So those are stored in the /TMP folder. A similar folder is available in Windows as well. I'm going to show that in a minute. But this is a temp folder in Linux. And if you want, you can delete any file from here. That's completely fine. Okay. Unless and until it is required by the system during that runtime, you can definitely delete it. Okay. And a similar folder like this is available in Windows as well. It's good practice to delete files from there because over time it keeps occupying a lot of space. So you can open up your run and search for percentage temp percentage. And now when you hit enter, this opens up the temp folder. And you can see I have around 265 files here. And if I want, I can delete all of them. There's no harm in that. Okay. So again, basically, it clears up some cache space on your system. A similar folder like this is available on Windows called TMP. Okay. So that's about TMP. Moving forward, there's var, again, contains variable data files. So basically, data which can dynamically change with time, which can automatically change with time is called variable data. Example, your system's log files, backup files, temporary files, web server files, files which can dynamically change are stored in var. So var is most importantly used for the log files. So all your system logs, system log, network log, again, tool log, all of those are stored in var folder. So if I go to var and log, these are all the different logs available on the system. Boot log, alternative log, fail log, error log, okay, Mac changer log. So all important log files are stored here in var log. Okay, so these files can automatically change, dynamically change by themselves. So they are stored in var folder here. Okay, So these are some important folders, guys. Again, I definitely did not cover all of them, only the most important ones. Bin for binaries, boot for booting files, etc for configuration files, home for secondary user personal files, lib for libraries, media for external device files. So whenever you connect an external media, those files are stored here. OPT for third-party files, root for root users files, sbin for applications which can be run specifically by root user. Okay. Temp for temporary files, var for variable files. Okay. There's a few other folders to discuss as well. Run, dev, uh, MNT, etc. We'll cover them in the upcoming sessions as we progress with our classes. But for now, these folders are more than sufficient. Okay. Moving forward, as mentioned, we now need to get the root user access. So we are still now running only as Kali user, but I need to get you root user access as well. So for that now, we need to create a password for the root account, guys. Okay. So in the olden days, you would have to install an application called apt install Kali root login. So unless you had this application installed, you couldn't run it as root user. You couldn't run or get root user access. Okay. But in the latest operating systems, you can ignore this completely. Okay. So you can directly start from step number 3, sudo password. So to explain this command, basically sudo stands for super user root. Okay. Whenever you want to run an admin related command, you have to add sudo in the front. So for example, earlier this command was not getting executed. But if I type sudo now, sudo first, and then apt-get install nmap. So now what it does is it says, I want to request this command's execution as a root user. So now when I hit enter, it'll ask me for my authentication because the computer needs to log, telling the root user that so-and-so person tried to install this app at so-and-so time using their authentication. So now when I give the password here, Kali, K-A-L-I, now it executes the command, as you can see. So whenever you want to run an app, a certain command in the terminal with root user privileges, you add sudo in the front. Okay. So what I'm going to run now is a command called sudo password. This is a command to create a new password for the root account. So now when I hit enter, it should ask me my password here for Kali user. But since I've already entered that, it won't be asking again. And now I can type the new password for the root user. So when you type the password, be careful. It will not be visible to you for security reasons. So type the correct password, hit enter, retype the same password again. Okay. And now the password has been updated successfully. Once the password is updated, you can now log out and log in again using root user access. So I can now log out and type the username as root. So you can't change the name for the admin account in Linux. It should always be called root. And now you can give the password which you just generated. And now we have root user access as well. Just to show you if we have root user access or not, if I open up the file system now, you can see the home icon now is not on the home directory, it's on the root user directory. And when I open it up, I have access to all the files within it. And even if I open up my terminal, in my terminal now you can see it says root@Kali. So I'm logged in as a root user in the system name called Kali. If I run the command who am I as well, it shows you I'm logged in as a root. And now whenever I want to install any app or again, when I want to perform any admin related task, I don't need to add sudo. I can just run the command as it is apt-get install nmap to install that app and it works perfectly fine. So only if you're logged in as a secondary user, you need to add sudo in the front. If you're logged in as root, you don't need to. You're the main admin, the user with the highest privileges on the system. Okay. Is that clear, guys? Any questions, any doubts up to this point? Charles, Ben, Wahab, Gurpreet, Vamsi. Perfect. Wahab, Benji, Vamsi. Yeah, okay. Vamsi, I know this might be a bit again new to you. So do let me know if you are facing any trouble, guys. Again, guys, Vamsi is, I guess, one of the youngest here. He's still in his high school and he's interested in cybersecurity. So he has joined the course. So uh, again, just a brief introduction on his part. So yeah, oh, I think someone asked something in the chat box. Benji, network issues. No, okay, no worries, Benji. You'll be getting the recording, guys, anyhow. So in the next session, guys, what we're going to talk about is some important Linux commands. So for all the various operations in Linux, such as moving files, copying files, editing files, or editing a configuration file, or checking the network configuration or etc. We have separate commands for that. Okay, and in the upcoming sessions, we're going to go through all these commands. So what I've done for easier understanding is I've executed each command, I've taken a screenshot, and I've described each command as well. And in our upcoming sessions, I'm going to explain all these commands practically, okay, one by one. So again, I'm going to get you familiarized. I'm going to get you a bit comfortable with the Linux environment. So once we run these commands, your grip is going to get a bit stronger. Your foundations are going to get a bit stronger in the Linux architecture. And that's very important, guys, because in our upcoming sessions, we'll be using Kali Linux a lot. Okay, a lot of tools for cybersecurity are installed in Kali. So it's very important for us to know how to run the Kali Linux comfortably. Okay, so we'll talk about all these commands in the upcoming sessions. But before we exit today, I have to share you the recordings and I have to share you these documentations. So please drop in your emails, guys, in the chat box. I'm going to share all these documents and all these recordings to you, and you can refer them back again. And when I share the recordings, guys, I usually share it with this website called Wormhole. So this is an online platform to share files up to 10 GB for free. But again, the only drawback is the files are only available for 24 hours. So I would recommend whenever I share a recording to you, download it within the first 24 hours, guys. Okay, because again, the file expires after that. Okay. So yeah, nothing further, guys. A request, please drop all your emails and all your all your emails in the chat